Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivarajari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Kalachandji Radha Kalachandji Radhe. Jaya Radha Kalachandji Radha Kalachandji Radhe. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Kalachandji ki jai. Granthaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna everyone. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. We'll start with the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You can read this together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances. Personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta prayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. My regular attendance in the classes on the Bhagavatam, my rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. Loving service unto the personality of Godhead, his praise of transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge, and for my respectful obeisances unto him. Alright, Hare Krishna everyone. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, entitled Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 9, Dhruva Maharaj Returns Home. So, what did we talk about last class? Remember where we are in the plot. Prema?
Dhruva Maharaj was lamenting that he had been, after basically broken pieces of glass, like material desires are nothing compared to the Lord's mercy. So he was lamenting that he had material desires.
Okay, yeah, Dhruva Maharaj, he's kind of like the hero of the story to this point. And after seeing Krishna, after seeing Vishnu, he's lamenting because he didn't have the proper mood or the proper desires. But what happens after that? What does he start doing? He's getting ready to return to the palace now. So that's what we're going to read today. I need to check which verse we're doing. I remember what the verse says, but I don't remember the number. Let me see. Okay. All right, we're on text 37. Does someone want to read this first text?
When King Uttanapad heard that his son Dhruva was coming back home, as if coming back to life after death, he could not put his faith in this message, for he was doubtful of how it could happen. He considered himself the most wretched, and therefore he thought that it was not possible for him to attain such good fortune.
So King Uttanapad, the whole time after Narada told him that he went to the forest, he's like, oh my God, my son has to be dead. Like, he's 5 years old, alone in the forest. He's dead. He's pretty much dead. And so he has a hard time putting his faith in this message that Dhruva is coming back. But Dhruva is coming back, so we'll see what happens next.
Although he could not believe the words of the messenger, he had full faith in the word of the great sage Narada. Thus he was greatly overwhelmed by the news, and he immediately offered the messenger a highly valuable necklace in great satisfaction.
Then King Uttanapad, being very eager to see the face of his lost son, mounted a chariot drawn by excellent horses and bedecked with golden filigree. Taking with him many learned brahmanas, all the elderly personalities of his family, his officers, his ministers, and his immediate friends, he immediately left the city. As he proceeded in this parade, there were auspicious sounds of conch shells, kettle drums, flutes, and the chanting of Vedic mantras to indicate all good fortune.
All right. We can just kind of visualize this scene. the whole kingdom's coming out to see this 5-year-old boy return from the forest.
Both the queens of King Uttanapada, namely Suniti and Suruchi, along with his other son Uttama, arrived in the procession. The queens were seated on the palanquin.
All right, we can. I think it'd be nice if we read the purport for this. I think it's pretty small, but Prabhupada has a nice thing on it.
After the departure of Dhruva Maharaj from the palace, the king was very afflicted. But by the words of Saint Narada, he was partially satisfied. He could understand his great fortune, the great fortune of his wife Suniti, and the great misfortune of Queen Suruchi, for these facts were certainly very open in the palace. But still, when the news reached the palace that Dhruva Maharaj was returning, his mother Suniti, out of her great compassion, and due to being the mother of a great Vaishnava, did not hesitate to take the other wife, Suruchi, and her son Uttam on the same palanquin. That was the greatness of Queen Suniti, the mother of the great Vaishnava Dhruva Maharaj.
Okay, so this is kind of going to touch on our theme a little bit, but it's so amazing, right? Like this other queen, she was so mean to your kid. Like sometimes you hear like parents are like, if someone was ever mean to their kid, they're like, they hate them, they're done with them, don't go to his house or any parties. But here it's like, actually the whole palace knows how nasty Sunasti was, Suruchi. So, but Suniti, she's so compassionate, and she isn't holding it over her head. She isn't holding a grudge. She's saying, "Come, like, sit next to me. This is like we're both his mother." So I thought it was really sweet. All right, next verse. Kaylee.
Upon seeing Dhruva Maharaj approaching the neighboring small forest, King Uttanapad, with great haste, got down from his chariot. He had been very anxious for a long time to see his son Dhruva, and therefore with great love and affection he went forward to embrace his long-lost boy. Breathing very heavily, the king embraced him with both arms. But Dhruva Maharaj was not the same as before. He was completely sanctified by spiritual advancement due to having been touched by the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
So this is it's kind of cool. Like Dhruva Maharaj gets back, and then his dad is like, okay, something's a little off with him though. Like he can tell that he's been sanctified by spiritual advancement. It's kind of like when people leave their families and they join the Hare Krishnas, and then they come back and their parents are like, okay, something's off now. But it's actually very ecstatic. Next verse.
Reunion with Dhruva Maharaj fulfilled King Uttanapad's long-cherished desire, and for this reason he smelled Dhruva's head again and again and bathed him with torrents of very cold tears.
Okay, wow. This is sweet. Yeah, Prabhupada in the purport for this, he talks about the difference between hot and cold tears. So, hot tears are when you're very angry and upset, and then cold tears are when you're super happy. So, Dhruva Maharaj is being bathed with these cold tears. Next verse.
Then Dhruva Maharaj, the foremost of all nobles, first of all offered his obeisances at the feet of his father, and then was honored by his father with various questions. He then bowed his head at the feet of his two mothers.
Okay, we'll come back to this verse in a little bit.
Suruchi, the younger mother of Dhruva Maharaj, saw that the innocent boy had fallen at her feet, immediately picked him up, embracing him with her hands, and with tears feeling, she blessed him with words. My dear boy, long may you live.
Okay, wow. Next verse.
Unto one who has transcendental qualities due to friendly behavior with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all living entities offer honor, just as water automatically flows down by nature.
Okay, yeah. Srila Prabhupada, he made some really amazing points in this purport that by being a spiritualist, all the envy that she had for him totally disappeared. Suruchi was no longer envious. And that he says that praise, just like water flows down by gravity, praise comes to those who are servants of God, because by serving God, they're getting the opulences of God.
The two brothers, Uttama and Dhruva Maharaj, also exchanged their tears. They were overwhelmed by ecstasy of love and affection, and when they embraced one another, the hair on their bodies stood up.
Okay, guy, this is like it's the happy ending, you know, of this story. But it's not actually the ending. We're gonna get into the maybe not as happy part, but it's nice.
Suniti, the real mother of Dhruva Maharaj, embraced the tender body of her son, who was dearer to her than her own life, and thus forgot all material grief, for she was very pleased.
My dear Vidura, Suniti was the mother of a great hero. Her tears, together with the milk flowing from her breasts, wet the whole body of Dhruva Maharaj. This was a great auspicious sign.
Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about how this is the same way that we bathe the deities with milk and water. So she actually abhisheked him. And then this abhishek from his mother was like a coronation that Dhruva will now be the king coming up. I was like, whoa, that's interesting.
The residents of the palace praised the queen. Dear queen, your beloved son was lost a long time ago, and it is your great fortune that he now has come back. It appears, therefore, that your son will be able to protect you for a very long time and will put an end to all your material pansies.
Okay, yeah. I like the point of how they say a long time ago. I believe that Dhruva Maharaj was only gone for 6 months, right? He did austerities for 6 months. So, but they felt it to be so long because everyone loved Dhruva so much.
Dear Queen, you must have worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who delivers his devotees from the greatest danger. Persons who constantly meditate upon him surpass the course of birth and death. This perfection is very difficult to achieve.
Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada in the purport here, he talks about how both the mother and the son were both worshipping Krishna. And she was worshipping Krishna to protect Dhruva. So, yeah, they're both being glorified in this instance. You can go back to the first text, the focus verse. Abhivandya pitu padav Ashirbhischa bimanchita Nama matara shirshna Yatkrita sajjanagani. Please chant. Abhivandya pitu padav Ashirbhischa bimanchita Nama matara shishna Satkrita sajjanagani. Abhivandya pitu padav Ashirbhischa vimantrita. Anama mataro shirshna. Nadkita sashana gani. Anyone else? You want to try? Abhivandya pitu padav. Ashirbhischa vimantrita. Nama mataro shirshna. Satkita Sashanagani. Alright, anyone else? Last call. Alright. Synonyms. Abhivandya, worshipping. Pitu, of his father. Pando, the feet. Ashibhi, with benedictions. Cha, and. Abhimanchita, was addressed. Nanama, he bowed. Mataro, to his two mothers. Shirshna, with his head. Satkrita, was honored. Satjana, of the nobles. Anagri, the foremost. Translation. Then Dhruva Maharaj, the foremost of all nobles, first offered his obeisances at the feet of his father, and was honored by his father with various questions. He then bowed his head at the feet of his two mothers. Purport. It may be questioned why Dhruva Maharaj offered his respect not only to his mother, but also to his stepmother, due to whose insults he had to leave home. The answer is that after achieving perfection by self-realization, and seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, Dhruva Maharaj was completely freed from all contamination of material desire. Feelings of insult or honor in this material world are not perceived by a devotee. Lord Chaitanya therefore says that one has to be humbler than the grass, and he recommends more tolerant than the tree to execute devotional service. Dhruva Maharaj therefore has in this verse been described as Saj Janagrihi, the foremost of noble men. The pure devotee is the noblest of all, and he has no feelings of animosity towards anyone. Duality due to animosity is a creation of this material world. There is no such thing in the spiritual world, which is the absolute reality. All right. So we're seeing the character of the now spiritually perfected Dhruva Maharaj, and how even the people who hurt him so much and who chastised him, his mother, his stepmother, he's now bowing at her feet. I was thinking this is very contrast to what we see in the modern day. I was thinking the demoniac tendency is actually to want to be offended. We see in the modern day times people are looking for the slightest thing to be offended about. Or I know even in myself, if someone says something in the slightest wrong tone at the wrong time, or they didn't laugh at my joke or something, I'm actually ready to be offended. I'm locked and loaded. Okay, time to get offended. We see in the modern day, I don't know, I've never driven before, but it looks like on the road also people are just okay, when is someone going to offend me? It's actually a pleasure it's like a rasa of being offended. You look at the internet is just everyone's trying to be offended and everyone's trying to offend each other. It's or people are even saying, I'm offended for what your ancestors did to my ancestors 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. So we see that it's actually quite mode of ignorance to want to be offended, to want to hold on to things, to want to hold a grudge. Does anyone have an idea why we have this pleasure in being offended? Do you have any ideas? Because it's linked to the body. What does that mean?
Because we're identifying with the body, so we think that, oh, I am being offended and my ego is hurt and something like that.
Hmm. But it almost seems like we want our ego to be hurt, right? Because, Tosi, Saki?
Well, I tell my kids if they don't get positive attention, they need negative attention.
Mm. Okay, yeah. So because of a lacking of validation, a lacking of positive attention, they're looking for just any attention they can get, which is often, I'm upset, I'm offended. Any other thoughts? Why is there this pleasure in getting offended?
Because it gives us this joy that we're so important.
Mm.
I'm so important that this person has now affected me, and I need to let everyone know about it, and especially them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's kind of the root of it all, actually, is that the more important we feel ourselves, the more we're likely to get offended. I was thinking the other day, someone like said something, and it kind of irritated me a little bit. I was like, oh, why are they like? Do they know who I am? But then I was on the phone, and someone was talking about how their father has gotten very sick, and they think they're gonna pass away, and it just like totally left. I was like, my problems are so small. Like I'm trying to make a huge deal out of the tiniest thing, when there's so many other things that are happening, so many bigger problems that like just like this desire to be self-absorbed, this desire to have everything revolve around you, and the one time a planet is not aligned with your orbit, you want to like blast it with your laser beams. I was thinking the Bhagavatam, there's actually tons of stories of people getting offended, and then the offended people offending others. Do you guys have any ideas or remember any stories of someone getting offended for almost even no reason? You can just call it out and I'll repeat it in the mic. Shringi. Okay, that's a good one. We'll talk about Shringi in a little bit. Okay. Durvasamuni, Daksha. Yeah, we actually just read about Daksha. Daksha, he wasn't honored properly. Shringi, it wasn't even him who got offended, insulted. It was his father. And Suruchi, okay. Maybe, do you want to explain that a little bit?
Well, when she saw Dhruva trying to sit in Uttanapad's lap, she kind of was offended that this spot is meant for my son, not for you.
Mm-hmm.
So she had that pride.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking we could talk a little bit about Parikshit Maharaj, because he's a great example of how to deal with these people who get offended by you, and also in these circumstances. So I'll tell a little story from the first canto. I'm sure most of you have heard this before, but one day, Parikshit Maharaj was on his chariot touring the kingdom, and he comes across this scene. Do you guys know what the scene was? The cow, the bull. So he comes upon this Shudra dressed as a king, which is already weird enough, but he's beating the bull, right? And the cow is crying watching this. The bull only has 3 legs. And so first he like chastises this Shudra. Why are you hitting this bull? What's wrong with you? He says it obviously more eloquently and stuff. And then the interesting thing is he then asks the bull, okay, who's hurting you? Which is interesting because he just saw him beating the bull, but he asks the bull, who is causing you this distress? And does anyone remember what the bull says? Prabhupada Priya? Huh? Okay, does anyone remember what the bull said? If we go to the text, he actually says, the cause of my suffering is actually hard for me to ascertain, because different philosophical viewpoints say different things. Some say that the self is the cause. Some say that the demigods are the cause. Some say that my actions are the cause. So he's actually finding a way to not blame the person who's attacking him. He's finding a way to actually take the offender, and he's doing anything in his power to not be offended. Offense? Yeah, Prabhupada Priya just shared that one who, Dharma says, one who identifies the perpetrator becomes guilty of the same offense that the perpetrator has caused. So that's one example, and I mean it's quite amazing to think about. He had lost 3 of his legs. I mean, like I get offended over the smallest thing. What to speak of someone cutting off 3 of my limbs? So Dharma is the example in this. And then we'll follow Parikshit Maharaj a little later. Parikshit Maharaj, he, by the will of the Lord, by the energy of the Lord, he ends up putting a snake on a sage who in his mind he thought didn't receive him properly. And then Shringi, the son of the sage, so Parikshit Maharaj, he sees the sage meditating, and the sage didn't get up to receive him. Saumika. So he puts the snake on the sage, and then his son, the sage's son. I was reading this, and he says he heard of the distress of his father while he was playing with his classmates, and he got so angry he touched the water of the river, and he cursed Parikshit Maharaj. In 7 days, Parikshit Maharaj, who is the lowest of all of his dynasty, is going to be bitten by a snake bird. And so that's pretty intense, right? Someone, like a very small thing. Actually, it's described how Dhruva Maharaj, after he curses Parikshit Maharaj, he then goes to his father, and then he sees the snake, and he cries loudly. So I didn't actually know that before until I was reading that this morning. But he didn't even see the snake before he cursed him. The slightest thing caused him to curse the king to die. So how does Parikshit Maharaj respond? Anyone know? Prema?
He just takes it as Krishna's will, and he accepts it, and he decides that he's going to use his time to hear about God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't get angry. He doesn't kill the kid. He doesn't hit the kid. You know, he just makes the best of the opportunity. So we see like this parallel of being offended versus being grateful. This is the will of the Lord. I was thinking just off the, I don't know, I was just thinking, we also see Prahlad Maharaj. Like all the things Prahlad went through, his own father. And what does he do in retaliation? Does anyone know what Prahlad Maharaj says? He's like, Nrsingadev, please take care of my father. Please liberate my father. And Nrsingadev says that, I was thinking about this the other day. If you ask a devotee how many generations get liberated up and down, they'll all say a different number. One will say 21, one will say 10, one will say 9, one will say 14, 7. Anyway, so a number of generations get liberated. But yeah, so he's actually concerned about the well-being of his father after he did so many horrible things. So that's another thing we can learn, is that if someone is offending us, instead of being offended, we can be concerned. We can pray for them. Another person who did this was Jesus, right? Does anyone remember what Jesus said in the scriptures?
Yeah, I think when he was being crucified, he said, "Forgive them. They know not what they are doing." Something like that, right?
Yeah, he's worried about them. He's like, doing something like this it's like, sure, it might be my problem, but it's a bigger problem for them. I might be suffering, but they're gonna get it bad for this. So please protect them. And then I guess the last thing I was thinking about is the example most prominent is Krishna himself. There's kind of two instances I could think of, but I'm gonna, I guess, focus on one instance. Do you guys know the story of Bhrigu Muni? He's traveling, and he wants to test the tolerance of different personalities. So he goes to Brahma, and he doesn't bow before Brahma, or he doesn't offer his respects to him. And Brahma gets kind of mad at him, and yeah, it's described. Brahma got angry with him. I believe he went to Lord Shiva, and I don't quite remember what happened. Okay, so he insulted Lord Shiva. And then he goes to Vishnu. Oh yeah, Lord Shiva got mad. Okay, he was going to kill Bhrigu, but Parvati was like, I'll kill him. And then he goes to Vishnu, and Vishnu is actually laying in the lap of Lakshmi Devi. And Bhrigu kicks him in the chest. Yeah, that's like, I was reading in Srila Prabhupada's purport, but that was the worst offense that Bhrigu could possibly imagine him doing. Not even hitting with his hand. First of all, hitting someone while they're laying down is so mean. But then, not even with your hand, you kick them in the chest. It was like such a rude thing to do, especially to God. But then, yeah, for no reason. I mean, it's later described that he was trying to glorify Vishnu by having him exemplify his tolerance. So it's not really something we can imitate, where I want to glorify Abai's tolerance, so I try to annoy him so that everyone can see how tolerant he is. Anyways, does anyone know what Lord Vishnu responded with? Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that before. I was reading earlier that both Vishnu and Lakshmi Devi both got up. They stood up and they welcomed it. Welcome. How can we serve you? Please take a seat. Let me wash your feet. Right after this bizarre incident. So. Yeah. All right. So I guess the last final point is that we've seen how not to act. Don't get offended over the slightest things. You don't have to be offended. It's a choice to be offended. It's a choice to be the victim all the time. And then instead of being offended, what can we do? We can be grateful. We can be concerned. And then we can even be respectful towards the person who offended us. And then I guess this last point is that this applies to us, but we've seen an example by Lord Chaitanya of what to do in the case of someone else getting offended. Does anyone know what Lord Chaitanya, how he retaliated in the case of someone else getting offended? He's going to chop off their head with the Sudarshan Chakra. Does anyone remember what Arjuna said when Ashwatthama, it was Bhima actually, when Ashwatthama killed the 5 sons of Draupadi? I don't know which one of them said it. I just remember. Yeah. Yeah, you can chop off the head, and then standing on top of Ashwatthama's head, Draupadi can take her bath. Arjuna said that. Okay, thank you. Got our pundit scholar. Anyway, so I guess this last point is that if we have to be practical. Anything on our own behalf, tolerant like the grass. You know, you step on the grass, you step on the straw doesn't get back up and fight, you know. The straw actually, it stays down. You know, you walk on the straw, and the straw's not protesting, the straw's not jumping back up. You can't knock me down, I'm invincible. You know, actually the straw, it stays down. Anyways, that's something to kind of meditate on, I guess. And what's the practical application? I guess it's a good time to open up for discussion on this point of, I guess overall is humility. Any thoughts, comments, questions, criticisms, offenses?
I was thinking that there's a saying, this is not exactly what it is, but it's something like that difficulties are inevitable, but suffering is optional. Right? So like people are going to offend us, bad things are going to happen in our lives, but we could choose how we're going to take it, whether we're going to become miserable and vindictive and revengeful, and or whether we're just going to accept, okay, this is Krishna's the supreme controller, this is his mercy. I may not understand it, but Krishna knows what's best, and he's brought this into my life, so let me just accept it with gratitude and try to grow from it and continue to demonstrate devotional qualities. Yeah.
Thank you.
Shri Prabhu, for the wonderful class. How do we, when we're speaking about humility and the qualities we're supposed to develop, and you know, being tolerant like a straw, how do we also hear that you don't want to be someone that walked all over. So how do we strike this balance of being a humble person, you know, being tolerant, but also not being someone that everybody just pushes over? How do we understand this?
I was actually thinking about this point a lot, is that the other instance of Krishna receiving blasphemous words is with Shishupal. And Krishna is the king, Krishna is the leader, it's the Rajasuya Yagya, he's the most glorified person. So in a sense, it's his duty to not put up with that, you know? And he ends up cutting off Shishupal's head after the 100th time he offended him. Also, we see Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada would get challenged by interviewers, communists, rascals, Christians. He was always getting challenged, and Prabhupada stood his ground. He didn't say, "You're right, I'm the most fallen." No, he was like, "This is the scripture, you're bogus." Like, he was, because he's a guru, he's the leader. It's actually part of his duty that I have to stand up for myself in this regard. Yeah, I guess maybe I kind of shared some instances, but I didn't really share like solutions. Maybe, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it kind of goes back to your point you were saying earlier, like on the behalf of others, when you have some duty, when you're responsible for other people, then that's your time to not just be a tolerant person and a humble person. That's out of the benefit for other people. You have to act a certain way.
Prabhupada Priya?
Yeah, I just thought of one pastime from Chaitanya Charitamrita where Srivas Thakur was, they did this whole setup to disgrace him by making him out to be a demigod worshipper. They put all the paraphernalia for worshiping Durga Devi. They even put like meat and all this stuff on his doorstep. And they were trying to disgrace him. And the next morning he woke up and he saw it there, and he was just like, "Everybody come see that I'm just a closet demigod worshiper and know the truth about me." So, but then of course the thing is that he had so much faith in Krishna. He wasn't really worried about his reputation. And then the other devotees, they all stood up for him, and they like drove that person who was trying to disgrace him out of town. And everybody understood the truth about his character. So see, even if somebody criticizes us, we don't have to defend ourselves. We don't have to try to show our glories, but we just need to keep going on. The truth always comes out in the end. And if somebody doesn't stand up for us, time will, in due course of time, the true character will be revealed. So it's not a fight that we have to fight,
or even the Shakshi Gopal pastime. Krishna will personally come and set the right, He'll put the truth in order.
Yeah. And I was thinking, because you mentioned about that we shouldn't let people walk all over us. You know, the last verse of Shikshastika literally talks about that. It says, Ashlishya va padaratam pinashim. And so the padaratam, somehow it didn't get into the translation, but it literally means trample me under your feet. Even if you trample me under your feet, still, Krishna, you're my Lord unconditionally. So, yeah, not a big deal. You know, we will get trampled on in life, but you just keep chanting Hare Krishna and it will be glorious.
Okay, so Nanda Braj and then Narottam.
I was really appreciating your point, Prabhupada Priya, that over time your character will be revealed. Like we make mistakes, right? But over time you kind of can see, oh, that person I just misunderstood them or something, but their heart gets, revealed over time. I appreciate that point. Thank you. I was thinking too that what a great opportunity it is when somebody shows, if you want to call it offense, but some kind of aggravation towards you, or because you can check in with them and see, maybe there's something that you're doing that could help this person. And by checking in, you can see, what can I do with my relationship with this person to strengthen it? So this is an opportunity to strengthen your relationship with that person, or just check in with them, because sometimes it's not even about you, right? Sometimes they're just having a tough time and this, that, and you show them that kindness of when they're having a tough time. And it's an opportunity to strengthen that relationship. So it's actually a great opportunity when somebody shows their irritation or upsetness. Unless, of course, the point is that sometimes people are being envious. And when people are being envious, we dodge that, right? We just like, hey, maybe not right now. we'll talk later, But in general, it's a good opportunity to connect.
I was just thinking also that I've heard that it's also important to protect someone else from committing offenses. So if someone is being very offensive towards you, one aspect is we tolerate the insult or the offenses, and then another aspect is that we want to stop them from committing more offenses. So then we also distance ourselves. Sometimes, like you distance yourself from someone in a relationship or in a situation where they're being too offensive, to protect them. And also, if you see it's impacting your, practically speaking, if it's impacting your mental health or your spiritual well-being, then to protect that, then you also distance yourself from that person. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, Narottam. And I was thinking of, like, in the Daksha Yagya, when Daksha was offended because Lord Shiva didn't stand up, and then he was just blasting Lord Shiva like anything. Lord Shiva just stood up and walked away. Like, he was totally cool as a cucumber. He didn't retaliate. He didn't defend. He just, like, left. Because he could, and he did that for Daksha's benefit. Specifically mentioned that he did that for Daksha's benefit. So, like that. Yeah, if you're in a relationship that's abusive or something, you can't stay in the relationship. You can't be like, oh, this is Krishna's mercy. Because the other person is they're going to end up suffering. And so you got to distance yourself from the person somehow or other.
Yeah, great points. Anything else? Any last comments, questions? End a little early. All right. Well, I hope everyone has an offenseless day where they don't get offended or make offenses. And if you do get offended, try to not be offended. Yeah. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Dhruva Maharaj ki jai. Lord Chaitanya ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Parikshit Maharaj ki jai. Shringi.
Therefore, with great enthusiasm, he started on a chariot for Vrindavan. The inhabitants of Vrindavana had been anxious to see Krishna and Balrama for a very long time. When Lord Balrama returned to Vrindavana, all the cowherd boys and the gopis had grown up. But still on his arrival, they all embraced him, and Balrama embraced them in reciprocation. After this, he came before Maharaja Nanda and Yashoda and offered a respectful obeisance. In response, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj offered their blessings on him. They addressed him as Jagadishwara, Lord of Universe, who maintains everyone. The reason for this was that Krishna and Balrama maintain all living entities. And yet, Nanda and Yashoda were put into such difficulty on account of their absence. Feeling like this, they embraced Balrama and, seating him on their lap, began their perpetual crying, wetting Balrama with their tears. Lord Balrama then offered his respectful obeisances to the elderly cohort and accepted the obeisance of the younger two. Thus, according to their different ages and relationships, Lord Balrama exchanged feelings of friendship with them. He shook hands with those who were his equals in age and friendship, and with loud laughter embraced each one of them. After being received by the cowherd men and boys, after receiving by the cowherd men and boys, the gopis, and King Nanda and Yashoda, Lord Balrama sat down feeling satisfied, and they all surrounded him. First, Lord Balrama inquired from them about their welfare, and then, since they had not seen him for such a long time, they began to ask him different questions. The inhabitants of Vrindavana had sacrificed everything for Krishna, simply being captivated with the lotus eyes of the Lord. Because of their great desire to love Krishna, they never desired anything like elevation to the heavenly planet or merging into the presence of Brahmans to become one with the absolute truth. They were not even interested in enjoying a life of but were satisfied in living a simple life in the village as cowherds. They were always absorbed in the thoughts of and did not desire any personal benefit, and they were all so much in love with him that in his absence their voice faltered, and when they began to inquire from Balramji. First Nanda Maharaj said, Yashodamai inquired. First Nanda Maharaj and Yashodamai inquired. My dear Balrama, are our friends like Vasudeva and others in the family doing well? Now you and Krishna are grown up, married men with children. In the happiness of family life, you sometimes remember your poor father and mother, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Devi. This is very good news that no simple King Kamsa has been killed by you, and that your friends like Vasudeva and others who had been harassed have now been relieved. It is also very good news that you and Krishna defeated Jarasandha and Kalayavana, who is now dead, and that you are now gopis arrived, Lord Balrama glanced toward them with loving eyes. Being overjoyed, the gopis, who had so long been mortified on account of Krishna and Balrama's absence, began to ask about the welfare of the two brothers. They specifically asked Balrama whether Krishna was enjoying his life surrounded by the enlightened women of Dwarakapuri. Does he sometimes remember his father Nanda and his mother Yashoda and other friends with whom he so intimately behaved while in Vrindavana? Does Krishna have any plans to come here to see his mother Yashoda? And does he remember us gopis who are now pitifully bereft of his company? Krishna may have forgotten us in the midst of the cultured women of Dwaraka, but as far as we are concerned, we still remember him by collecting flowers and throwing them into gardens. When he does not come, however, we simply pass our time by crying. He would have come here and accepted this alliance from me. Dear Lord Balrama, descendants of dear Balrama, descendant of Krishna, you know that we would give up everything for Krishna's sake. Even in great distress, one cannot give up connection with family members, but although it might be impossible for us, we gave up our father, mother, sisters, and relatives. But then Krishna, without caring a pinch for our renunciation, all of a sudden renounced us and went away. He broke off our intimate relationship without serious reservation and left for a foreign country. But he was so clever and cunning that he manufactured a very nice word. He said, my dear gopis, please do not worry. The service you have rendered